We'll jump into today's episode right after this announcement. For over 13 years, something remarkable has been happening. Rural hospitals and other small healthcare organizations that have partnered with Capstone have been achieving results and forming workplace cultures that even we are blown away by. It is truly a game changer when rural hospitals are the provider of choice and employer of choice so they can keep care local and margins strong. Far more healthcare organizations need to experience what's possible. That's why we're stepping forward in a bigger way, expanding our team of experts, expanding our capabilities by adding a strategic planning division to expand our ability to help even more rural hospitals and other healthcare organizations in 2026 and beyond. Capstone will continue to be the partner that small healthcare organizations can count on to meet them where they're at and guide them towards a stronger future. You can learn more at capstoneleadership.net. So the goal isn't just improvement. The goal is becoming stronger as an organization. And so that really requires us to move to a new, better way of how we strategize, how we sequence strategy, how we deploy strategy, how we lead change, and how we do these things in a very holistic, coordinated, integrated approach.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzlaff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage.
So glad you're here for another episode of Culture Change RX. It is me, Sue Tetzlaff, co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions and your host of Culture Change RX. And today is one of those solo episodes that we call a Culture Bite. So it is just me here in the studio, all alone with you. And the topic today, I'm going to call it whack-a-mole. So hopefully you're familiar with the game of whack-a-mole, where these little creatures pop up and somebody stands there with a hammer pounding them down. And it's so funny because when I think about that, one of my daughters, when she was in elementary school, that's what she wanted to be for Halloween, was a whack-a-mole machine. So we actually created this little box that she was in, and she was a whack-a-mole machine. But anyway, that's getting sidetracked. But what I mean by talking about this on a Culture Change RX podcast episode is that a lot of times I think organizations can sometimes feel like they're playing a game of whack-a-mole. We improve one area and then another starts struggling. We focus intently on one initiative and then momentum fades somewhere else. We launch project after project, but somehow we still don't feel stronger overall, like we're getting ahead, like it's still, these moles keep popping up. And so I was thinking about this because when we start working with an organization and what we call a capstone partnership, where we're partnered with a small and rural healthcare organization that has their sights on becoming stronger, more agile, and in particular, becoming an employer and provider of choice so they can keep care local and margin strong. And so when we're partnered with them to help them adopt a framework, a formula for systems to make this a really systematic and strengthening process. We don't want it in the end. It cannot be in the end like a whack-a-mole game, that when we're working with them to be able to create an organization that gets stronger and stronger, it improves, it grows year after year, is that it can't feel like this thing's get better while this gets worse. And then in turn, this one gets better and this one gets worse. And as soon as we take our eye off of this, then it goes back to the old way. And so that's exactly what we're working against, right? We're replacing that kind of sense or feeling through our work with them so that indeed they can become stronger, more agile, and that the results show it, right? That they become an employer and provider of choice where they can keep care local and margins strong. But part of that process when we start working with them is to assess their organization to really understand what has been happening in the organization. So we do a look back. So we're looking at results, how they've been trending. Are these favorable trends, or is there a lot of variability? They're going up and down. What have they tried to initiate? What progress did they get, or results or impact did they get with that? And so it is often in this assessment period when we're beginning our work with a new organization that we see that, these organizations have not been lacking effort, or they haven't been not trying, right? But it's looking like whack-a-mole was going on, right? And it takes a lot of energy, right, to keep swinging at that mole that keeps popping up. And so what they're really missing, and we recognize this, and it's part of why we're going to be working together to solve this, is that they're really lacking this alignment, sequencing, and synergy, right? And so it's almost like we have to have a whole bunch of those hammers. So instead of one hammer to hit one mole, we have multiple hammers hitting multiple moles all at the same time. And that can seem like extra work versus seeming like a new way to work, right? But what we see when we're reflecting back to organizations that just haven't been able to improve and build on and sustain and optimize results and systems and progress and reputation and culture is that these organizations have often been pursuing isolated projects, disconnected initiatives, reactive fixes, and maybe individual departmental improvements that haven't been linked to an overarching framework, strategic alignment, proper sequencing, and overall system integration. So improvement is happening, but organizational strengthening is not, which also means that the sustainment of those improvements and the leveraging of those strengths is not happening either. So, we can talk about patient experience initiatives, employee engagement initiatives, leadership training, strategic planning, safety initiatives, turnover initiatives. All of these can be occurring independently in the organization. And they're all right? Like they're all good things to pursue. But when these efforts are disconnected, they're like those little moles underneath the ground there, and we pop them up and they're competing for attention. They're creating initiative fatigue. They create fragmented energy and they dilute momentum unless they're connected together, right? So organizations don't become the employer and provider of choice through disconnected excellence. And again, that can look like, to me, I'm envisioning whack-a-mole, right? We improve turnover, but patient experience slips. We focus on quality, but employee engagement declines. We launch strategic goals, but leadership consistency weakens. We improve one department, but the overall organization doesn't feel stronger. So in essence, I'm describing an organization where some pieces are improving while the system itself, the organization itself, remains maybe quite fragile because these efforts are not integrated, they're not reinforcing each other, and they may not be sequenced strategically. It's kind of like a sports analogy. I like to use a lot of sports analogies, is that it's kind of like strengthening only one muscle group while ignoring the rest of the body. Or it could be like a championship team that doesn't train offense, or it neglects defense, conditioning, teamwork, or coaching, or they don't understand or contemplate or approach it as if they all go together. They're feeling very isolated and fragmented. It reminds me of back in the day, too. Another analogy is it reminded me of back in the day, in the early days of electronic health records, where we used a lot of fragmented systems, right? And so we had best of breed. That was a phrase, right? We chose the best of breed. And then we had all these interfaces that strive to kind of connect them together. And gosh, those all had to be manned, right? And they all had to be mapped out and tended to, and they had to be problem solved and work, right? So it's almost like duct taping all of these practices together versus it being built together as one integrated, well functioning system that was designed to work properly in total. All the pieces worked in total together. So organizations don't become strong through isolated improvements. They become strong through coordinated strengthening. And this actually comes to describe what is so different about our work as a healthcare, let's say, consulting firm. I don't like to call Capstone a consulting firm. I like to say we're strategists, trainers, and coaches, and we're transformational experts. But what differentiates us from other healthcare consulting or service organizations is that we don't just focus on one area of improvement. We focus on multiple systems, a framework formula for systems that become how we strengthen culture, strategy, and systems. And so we help organizations build the ability to pursue balanced strengthening, integrate their efforts, sequence transformation, build reinforcing systems. So this is kind of like introducing like a holistic approach or a whole organization approach. And really, healthcare lends itself to that as an organization, right? Patient experience affects growth, reputation, employee pride, physician recruitment, retention, leadership, effectiveness affects engagement, accountability, communication, change execution, employee engagement affects safety, service, retention, innovation, culture. Like everything connects. I mean, we could go on and on and on. And you can see that it's also interrelated, interconnected, and that if we want to become a stronger, more agile, organization full of organizational vitality, we're going to have to work on this, not just in a whack-a-mole approach, but in an organized, systematic, sequenced, strengthening approach. So the most powerful transformation efforts are definitely synergistic and not siloed, like those little moles popping up. And it's also not reactive, right? Which is what whack-a-mole is also very reactive. So almost like the squeaky wheel getting the grease, right? So again, the beauty of our work in Capstone Leadership Solutions, partnering with small and rural healthcare organizations, is that we're not just implementing random best practices. We're helping and guiding organizations to build interconnected systems that strengthen the organization as a whole. And when systems strengthen together, wow, does momentum accelerate? I guess, that's what I love when we start a new partnership with a healthcare organization is they're excited about the vision that they're pursuing, the improvements that they're desiring on the other side of this. But we can actually see it at, our Capstone team. We've been able to watch the before and after so many times that they have a vision for it, but we can really see it because we've seen it time and time again, right? So like we really can see what's on the other side of adopting this framework formula and for systems. And it's so cool when we're helping them build these systems and strengthen these systems together. And then this momentum accelerates. And It's not just like the small blip on the screen that happens and then goes away. It's like sustainable, and you build on it and you build on it. And it is like that snowball rolling downhill, getting bigger and bigger and more powerful. And there is an important nuance to this, though, is that not everything should happen at once. I mentioned that there's many things and that they're all connected and that there's these systems. And it really is important to know that not everything should happen at once, and that strong organizations are really intentional about how they sequence their efforts, prepare their foundations first, and then build upon them. So they build some very foundational strengths and systems like people, service, and quality as strong pillars of their organization, leadership, change, achievement, and team systems that become foundational systems. Then they start aligning initiatives and they start building capacity for growth. And so, one of the great things that we get to participate in, and where organizations that partner with us really count on us, is to understand the details of this, right? We've done it so many times. We've helped so many organizations that are very similar in size, primarily small and rural healthcare organizations, most with less than 1,500 employees, actually most between 300 and 600 employees, most of them critical access hospitals or rural clinics, federally qualified clinics or nursing homes, et cetera. But they're so similar in the complexity, the challenges, the issues of being a smaller organization that wants to be strong and even dominant in the marketplace, right? And so what they rely on us for is knowing, one, what systems, what foundations we have to build first so that we can leverage those strengths, leverage those systems for that building of momentum, that improvement of results, that growth, that strength that we can leverage and maintain and capitalize on well into the future. And so you don't pursue aggressive growth before you make sure you have a stabilized workforce and culture, right? And so knowing how this all goes together and relying on experts that understand the integration, the sequencing, what's foundational, what's to be leveraged, that's where our expertise comes in Capstone Leadership Solutions. And so we're the ones helping to transform this whack-a-mole machine into something that looks like very different. Like it's just not even looking like a whack-a-mole machine any longer. It's looking like a well-oiled machine that is improving and growing year after year with more ease and speed. And that doesn't look anything like a whack-a-mole game in progress, right? And so some organizations don't fail because they choose the wrong initiatives. Like I said, I gave you a long list of amazing initiatives that we know organizations are pursuing, but they fail because they approach them maybe in the wrong order or in an uncoordinated, unsystematic, unsustainable approach. And so transformation really should feel well coordinated and thoughtfully deployed, right? And sequenced. It's so cool that, strong organizations, they're not just improving isolated parts. They're strengthening the systems themselves. They're strengthening the organization holistically and in total. And when that whole organization, that all of those systems get stronger, results and growth just becomes easier to sustain, leverage, and build upon. So while playing a game of whack-a-mole can be fun, right? In healthcare organizations, the equivalent to that just isn't going to create the strategic results and momentum that most organizations are not just desiring, but needing. So the goal isn't just improvement. The goal is becoming stronger as an organization. And so that really requires us to move to a new, better way of how we strategize, how we sequence strategy, how we deploy strategy, how we lead change, and how we do these things in a very holistic, coordinated, integrated approach. That's what creates strong and agile healthcare organizations, right? So if you're an organization that does want to stop playing whack-a-mole, or in any way thinks that your organization might be ready for a new, better way of strategy and execution, we invite you to reach out and schedule a call series with us. You can go to our website, capstoneleadership.net, and there is a contact us page, and you can send us a note through there, or you can even book that first call right from there. You can find a day and time and self-schedule that, or you can email us at info, I-N-F-O, at capstoneleadership.net. And we can engage with you there to find a day for that very first call. So thanks for being here again for a weekly episode of Culture Change RX. We'll be back each Wednesday with another episode. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.